Yeah.
Ollie.
Jane, it's good to see you. You were able to get on. You're on your phone this week.
I am, but I just had to run and find some headphones. I'm like, oh, I can't hear anything.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I found some that fit, so that's good.
I think I've got a message that Vivi's coming.
I might have to leave after now because I'm having to use my phone data because we've got, say, power outage all morning. I thought I'll stay at least for an hour if I can.
Cool.
Ollie, we didn't get your bread delivery for
What bread delivery?
Huh?
Was I supposed to deliver bread to you?
No, I got coffee, but we can send your bread.
Oh, you scared me. I thought I'd missed an order.
Yeah, might have to try your organic bread one day.
Oh yeah, because you know how we delivered Carissa's products to everybody?
Yeah, no, I think Makoto was joking, but yeah. Could have done that. Maybe we'll have to do one post hoc.
Post bread delivery, yeah.
Post talk, yeah. Should we get started or are we waiting for someone?
I think we can get started and Vivi can just join.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would like to welcome Ollie, who is my husband. So it's a lovely privilege to have him here today. And welcome everyone to the Zoom Small Business Talks. So this is Ollie presenting on how he went from becoming a maths teacher in a high school to running a series of small businesses that now sustain him and our family. So over to you, Ol.
Cool. So yeah, hi everyone, officially. I'm Ollie.
Hey, Ollie.
And yeah, so the way that I'm going to do my small business talk is I'm just going to tell you my story, really. And because I think that for me, that's valuable, hearing other people's stories. So I imagine that it's valuable for anyone who's on that path to just connect in with mutual experience and mutual motivations and mutual challenges, and to hear about how someone else has surmounted those challenges, but also just to know what's possible. And I don't mean that in a way of like I've achieved what's possible. I just mean that I think without the stories and without the shared experience, we tend to just look at our current reality and think that that's all that there is. And so by hearing each other's stories, I feel like we can aim for something. We can aim for what it is that we want in our lives. So with that in mind, please feel free to ask questions at any point or ask questions at the end about anything that you particularly want to know about our unique business model. But yeah, so I want to start by saying where I come from in terms of my history and where and how I came to living in Heidelberg West in a yurt, running about, I think, 5 businesses that interweave with our life. So I, as Rach said, I trained as a maths teacher. I did my maths degree. I started in Auckland and then I moved to Wellington and finished it there. And then I went to Christchurch because I sought out a school that had a really good reputation for training teachers. And I moved down there with nothing. No, I didn't know anyone there. So that was a really fresh start for me. And that was in many ways a tough time, but it was a really rigorous training in teaching. And then I moved into teaching in Christchurch because I had done 5 placements, and of that I got a couple of job offers. So I was offered a job in one of New Zealand's sort of top private schools, and also in a pretty low socioeconomic school. And I chose the low socioeconomic school because it was much more in line with my values of why I got into teaching in the first place. Even though my experience of teaching at the private school was a lot easier. Like I could stand at the front of the class and deliver essentially a lecture, and then get really intelligent questions back, and have a really fun time just just sort of feeding information to people who were ready for it. Whereas when I went to the low socioeconomic school, I felt that what I was having to teach was for a lot of the kids I was teaching, it was just so not what they wanted, or so not what they were ready for, but the curriculum dictated that they had to learn that. And so that was the challenge, and that was what drove me into teaching in the first place, and particularly maths. I wanted to be able to share the joy of maths to people with people who otherwise might not find it accessible. And so I really played around with different ways of teaching, and I tried to work on the culture of the class as much as the education, sort of under the understanding that if I could get the right culture in the classroom, that the teaching would flow better. And I found that was true. I was able to get the class to a point where students were able to work on their own and have their own learning programs, because they were at vastly different points in their education, and to try and teach them all at once would have just been a complete waste of time. So that was pretty successful for me. I felt like I'd achieved something that I wanted to, but I had this nagging feeling that being in the education system, no matter how much I carved out a space for myself, was always going to be pushing a certain what's the word, agenda that was at odds with the students that I was standing in front of. So, and that was through no one's fault, I don't think. It was just the way that the whole structure is set up with you know, I sort of see it starts at parliament level, and then the politicians set certain laws and rules, and that filters down into the management level, into the Department of Education, who then feeds that down to the principals, who then feed that down to the heads of department, to the teachers, and then that's me standing between this immovable force, or this unstoppable force, and an immovable object of the students who, you know, that really needed to be learning to read properly, or eating breakfast, or learning interpersonal skills, and didn't really need algebra yet. We could get to algebra if we just focus on the other stuff. So I felt that really was a huge pressure on me internally to try and hold that. And it's not like I didn't know it was like that before I got in. I don't think I knew to the full extent, but I had always had this idea that I could go into the system and be a force for good. But what I learned when I got in there was that the system was so much bigger than me, that it was always going to take a toll on me as a human, as one single organism in a massive system. So when Rach and I got together, that was during my time as a teacher, her life inspired me. She had always been someone who had started things from nothing, and who had seen a need in the community and just gone, I'm going to do something about that. She, you know, when Rach was, she won't get a chance to talk to you about this during this series because she's the organizer, not the speaker, but just a little brief, you know, a tiny story to show why Rach inspired me was that when she was at university, she'd been to Bangladesh studying, and when she came back, she met someone on the train from India, and she said hello to him, and he nearly burst into tears. He said, I've been here for 2 years and no one in public has ever said hello to me, and I just feel so lonely. And Rach found that pretty shocking. She thought, I got to do something about this. So she started, well, she just got people together to start with. You know, I think this is how business starts. You just get people together, you just do something. You don't have to start a business first. That can come later. But she just got some Aussie kids together, and she got some international students together, and she organized things for them to do, like going to the footy and going to, you know, organizing a Bhangra dance, which I think is from Kashmir. Is that right, Rach? Can you nod if that's true?
Punjabi.
Yeah, anyway. Yeah, so it's a Punjabi dance. And, Punjab, sorry, of course. Anyway, so she got funding. She got about $50,000 from the government to put on these events. and that started an organization called Polyglot. And so Rach has done about, oh, I don't know, countless things like that in her life where she's seen a need and she's gone out and done something about it. And I found that really inspiring because it was so different to my experience of walking the trodden path, i.e. becoming a teacher, and then getting there and finding that there's already an enormous system and infrastructure and institution set up that predates me by hundreds of years, and it has a whole historical context, which is at odds with what I might like to do in my small, you know, humble or arrogant way, whatever it is, whatever I want to do, it's at odds with this system that is much, much bigger. And so I thought that was like the seed of an idea. And then when I came to Australia after we married, we were living at Rachel's parents' place, and this is where it gets personal for me. Is we were just I was teaching. I was doing some relief teaching in schools, which is pretty soul destroying when you're going out to a new class every hour and forming relationships every hour, and then cutting them at the end of the hour and going to the next, and then going to a new school on the other side of Melbourne the next day. So that was sort of part of it. But at the same time, on the off days, we were building a playground at her parents' place for the cousins. Well, they're now cousins. At the time, they were just nephews and nieces. And I couldn't help notice how good I felt after a day of building, of digging and drilling. And I didn't know what I was doing. I'd done a little bit of landscaping in my gap year, but you know, I sort of learned all the mistakes the hard way. But it made me think there's something to this. I've got to go and do something about this. And so I went, and our friend Gavin, who we were singing with at the time, I asked him what he did, and we were just getting to know him. And I said, "Oh, what do you do?" And he said, "I'm a landscaper." And I said, "Oh, I'd love to come and, you know, do some work for you." And he said, "Oh yeah, here we go. I've heard this one before." But I said, "No, I'd like to." So I came along and I did a day. And at the end of the day, he said, "So are you coming back tomorrow?" And I said, "Yeah, why wouldn't I?" And he was like, "Well, a lot of people don't after the first day. It's hard work." So but I loved it, you know, just like shoveling stuff off the ute into the tip, and like just using my body in this really full on way really suited me. And so I did 2 years with him, and it was, it was really fun. It was like a bridge for me to not be a teacher anymore, and to learn some really great skills as a landscaper. There were other things about traveling to his work and working such long hours, and I was maths tutoring in the evenings as well, so often doing 14-hour days. That meant it wasn't sustainable in the long run. So eventually I said, I've got to stop this. And that's when I started working for Suzanne and Michaela at OAE just one day a week. And I was doing little landscaping projects on the side, and I had a couple of gardens that Rach and I were working on every week. And so, you know, just cobbling together a bit of an income out of the loose ends. And I think this is probably for me what was the hardest thing about starting my own business, was taking that leap from having a continuous regular income that I could count on to going, how am I going to cobble together an income from a range of different projects? And so this is where I feel like a staggered approach is really important, when you're making a transition from an institution to creating your own institution or creating your own system. Is that some people call it the trapeze method, where you've got one hand on one trapeze before you get your hand on the other one. And so for me, it was like I had a series of tiny little trapezes, to the point where I could then see, all right, I've got enough work stacked up for the next 6 months. I'm cutting free. I'm out of here. And so I left OAE, and I left the gardens that I was working for. And so then on the side, at the same time, and I think, you know, parallel to all of this, Rach and I had been talking about buying a farm and running a camel farm. that was a dream that initially came from Rach as an idea, but that I felt really inspired by, and I thought, yeah, let's do that. Like, that seems just totally crazy, but let's do it. And so I was reading a book by a guy called Joel Salatin, who's this renegade American farmer. He's a regenerative farmer who has done amazing things with his farm, and he inspires people across the world. And one of the things he said was, don't wait until you have a farm to start farming. And that sounded pretty, when I read that, I was like, what do you mean by that? That sounds pretty strange. He said, if you've got a balcony or if you've got a backyard, you can grow something. Or maybe you can't grow something, but you could take raw materials like, wheat or flour or whatever, and turn it into bread. You could turn it into cupcakes. Get into the food industry. And it wasn't, and it's not, and you might say that's not farming, but if you're looking at smaller scale farming, and he says this too, you really need to be not just selling commodities to a commodity agent. You don't want to be at the behest of supermarkets. You won't make any money that way. What you need to be doing is growing things, raising animals, whatever, but then adding value by turning it into something. So turning it into a product. And the closer you can get to your customer, if you can direct sell to your customer, then you get every dollar of what they pay. You're not paying countless middlemen or women along the way, which is what, that's the typical traditional method of farming, is to go big and to sell cheap to people who set the price for you. And so there's this new model of farming that isn't like that is multifaceted. So you're using your waste product as the input for another system. For example, he's got pigs, right? But he's also got rabbits that run on top of the pigs in the winter. And so the warmth from the pigs warms the rabbits, and they've just got cages. And the poo goes down from the rabbits into the pig pen, and they root around looking for their food, and they break up the poo. And so by the end of the winter, they've got all this beautiful pig and rabbit manure to spread on the fields, which they use for raising sheep. So just, the sky is the absolute limit when it comes to farming, but I don't think it stops there. I think that the sky's the limit in terms of business. And that's what inspired me and Rach to start diversifying our business. So yes, I'm a landscaper, but we've also built our own little, behind me you can see there's a yurt. So we didn't make the yurt, we made the platform that it sits on, but then we made this kitchen. I don't know if you can see that there through there. We built a kitchen around it. This is using our landscaping and building skills. And we've redone the garden out there with recycled bricks, and we've planted it out, and we've made a little haven for ourselves. And not only that, we also, when I bake bread, see that hanging up there? You probably can't tell, but it's actually a rack that folds down, and it can cool 48 loaves in one go. And then that's the mixer down there. And then behind me, there's a little hole in the wall. Where is it? Oh, it's down by my shoulder there. That pops open, and on the other side we've got a little cafe. It's not a real cafe. It's a pretend cafe for Tully and Dara, our kids. So we've actually made our life and our business all interwoven in the same way that Joel Salatin described his farm. So we don't have pigs and rabbits, but we've got children and yurts and bread and landscaping. I do maths tutoring with my skills, because that's something I want to keep. I want to keep that alive, and it's very much what I wanted to do when I became a teacher. Is I wanted to help people to understand maths and find the joy of maths. But I found one-on-one with people who actually want it is a lot more satisfying and inspiring for me personally. So, and this is the thing, you hear a lot of people talk about, I want to do good in the world. But if you do good in the world in a way that's not sustainable to your spirit, then you get tired, and then you can't do any more good in the world. And so you have to stop doing good in the world. Whereas if you can find a way that feeds yourself and others, then it's like a feedback loop. And I'm finding that the more that I do that feeds others and feeds myself, the more I want to keep doing it, and the more I want to find new ways of doing it. And so you know, and the only limit is my imagination. Well, that's one thing, my imagination, and that just comes as each step grows, and we have little ideas. We're like, oh, what about if we did this? What if we built a yurt in this backyard and lived there? But then the other thing that goes alongside imagination, I find, is courage, because as each imaginative step comes, there has to be this backup, this sort of internal grit that says, well, I can see that's scary. I don't even know if it's possible, but I'm going to give it a go anyway. And so it's that courage to take that step and to face. I think Dan, for those of you who were able to tune into Dan Frankel's talk last week, I was really thankful that he touched on, and very eloquently, he touched on the emotional and psychological component of starting a small business, because we all have core beliefs, we all have a psychological and emotional landscape that we, to a greater or lesser degree, will be aware or not aware of it, but it's still informing our decisions. And so he talked about your beliefs about money, for example. And if you have a belief that there's not enough resources in the world on a deep psychological level, and then you come up against the prospect of financial success, then there's going to be a disjoint between the reality and your belief. And so if you're not able to look at those beliefs and challenge them and listen to them and go, okay, I can hear that little voice of doubt, of nagging doubt speaking, and I'm going to listen to it, but I'm not going to take it as truth. I'm not going to believe it, and I'm not going to follow it. I'm going to take that step anyway. And that's that courage that needs to back up inspiration or intuition, or what was the word I used? Imagination. So I feel like when life and business are worked in this way, it's like there's actually no line between them. There's no time when I switch off and say I'm not working anymore, and there's no time when I fully switch on and say I'm working now. I mean, there might be times when I'm baking, for example. I'll say, like, now I'm baking. I've got to get this out. I've got to do this. But I'm still, there's sort of no limit to how life and business can actually interweave. And some people don't like that. Some people like to keep a clear line between work and home. But I feel like there's an enormous joy in living a life that is interwoven and complementary with all other components. So yeah, that's a bit of the the backstory, and just to sort of lay it all out for what I and Rach actually do. So I do maths tutoring because I have a degree in maths and I'm trained as a maths teacher. Rach does English tutoring because she has a degree in journalism, and that's always just led into teaching young kids English and how to write essays and also just exam techniques. She's always been a very adept exam sitter. She did incredibly well in the academic field. So we both do that, and I do landscaping. But what I've found is that I'm not the best designer. I can design things on a really small scale. If I'm designing a wall that has a curve to it, I can get a really nice curve. But I wouldn't have thought to do the wall necessarily in the first place. And what I've learned about Rachel is that she can't help just seeing huge vision. She can't help just seeing what's not there. She'll look at a space like this backyard and she'll be like, we need paving. We need a bathroom. We need a kitchen. We need this. We need that. We need quails. She'll just like get this. She'll just get this inspiration. I don't know really where it comes from, and I know that she can't turn it off because it's constant. Like, she'll be lying in bed just dreaming, and so what I've learned in my landscaping is that I can't do it without her. I can't be I can do little jobs. I can build someone a retaining wall. I can do some paving, but that's sort of like I go there and they've already come up with the idea and I'm just implementing it to the best of my ability. But if I want to be a landscape designer and work in landscape construction, then I have to be a team with Rach. And so that's where we're heading. We've built 3 gardens together now. And I just find it such a magical, mystical process with her, because I don't have that vision. I don't know where we're going. And so I just sort of dutifully implement each next step. I can see about 2 or 3 steps in front of me at a time. And so my job is to come up with solutions to technical problems. Like, for example, how do you make 48 loaves cool hang from the ceiling, but then fold away so you can use that space afterwards? That's sort of the kind of technical level problem that I really thrive with. I think that's my maths background and the way that my brain works. And so, yeah, we've got the tutoring, we both do that. We've got the landscaping, we both do that. We've got the bread. So for me, so the bread comes from my father. My father developed a gluten-free bread recipe that's organic and low glycemic index. So it's in terms of gluten-free bread, it's really healthy. It's 4 different types of seeds in it. It's got psyllium for fiber. It's got linseeds, and so he shared his recipe with me under top secret conditions. And I said, do you mind if I make a business of it? And he said, yeah, no, that's why I'm telling you. So he's in New Zealand, and he's doing a dry bread mix there, which he's selling to shops, in a packet, and people bake it themselves. Whereas I've opted to bake it and sell it to people as a loaf. And again, I couldn't do it without Rach, because she's a great communicator. So she writes my emails for me. I just go and sort of tweak them and maybe do a bit of editing. But I find communication with large amounts of people in one go very challenging, because I can't read people's facial expressions, and I can't see how they're responding to me. I much prefer to call someone than to text them, for example. So, that's sort of a weakness that I've identified in myself, and try as I might, I'll never be as good a communicator as Rach. So that's something that she does. And she also sort of helps me to grow the business. So she found the mixer, she found the oven, she found the bread tins. She'll organize that, get a good price for it. All these things that I can't do, that I'm just not good at. So I feel incredibly blessed in all areas of life to be with someone as complementary and competent as Rach. And so, I think Dan last week touched on this theme as well, is that, some people have money that they can invest in business. Some people have incredible talent. I think everyone has incredible talent. They just need to find what it is. Some people have a really supportive partnership that they can bounce off and work together. And other people have a supportive family that they can lean on. But whoever you are, whatever you are, you have particular circumstances and strengths and skills. And if you can draw on those, I think that some people, I don't know why maybe they don't believe that they have them. I've even seen some people actively sabotage the strengths and privileges that they have been born into by thinking it's not fair that they have them and other people don't. And to me, that just strikes me as such a wrong idea, because if you have privilege, or you have strengths, or you have, let's say advantages in some area, there's going to be other areas that you have disadvantages. Maybe you're born into a wealthy family, but maybe they have deep psychological issues. And so, yes, you're financially privileged, but you're psychologically deprived. And so if you're not going to draw on what you do have, whatever that is, then you're just basically opening yourself up to whatever disadvantages you've been born into. So, so I feel eternally grateful for that partnership with Rach. And I would say that along with our talents that we bring, that's our biggest advantage, and that's what we draw on to create the business that we do, or the businesses. Because I don't think everyone would want to do what we're doing. I don't think everyone could do what we're doing. But this is just our unique way of doing it. a way that weaves in our children. You know, like we have goats that we milk in a collective just one street over, and so our kids come and they milk the goats. We bake bread here, so the kids, the Tully, like he's a really technical minded kid, just like me, and he loves turning on the mixer and changing the gears and counting. He's like, how many seconds on gear one? I'm like, 20 seconds. He's counting. You know, I'm mixing the next load of bread, and he's going 20, 19, or he usually counts forwards because he's 4, but 1, you know, counts up to 20, and then he's like, how many seconds on gear 2? I'm like, I just go straight to gear 3 for 2 minutes, and he puts the timer on and he changes it to gear 3, and he just has so much joy watching it go because it's super fast. Actually, just as a little breather, I'm going to show you how fast it goes, because if you're like me, you'll want to see that. So no matter how much bread is in there, it still moves at that speed. It's just such a cool mixer. But anyway.
How many mix at once?
So what was that?
How many loaves do you mix in that mixer at once?
I can do 12 at once.
Oh, okay.
But I prefer to do between 6 and 9, because 12 starts to flick over the sides and then I have to clean it up afterwards. But I can change the gears and just do it a bit slower and still do 12 quite easily. And so so where was I? I was landscaping, maths tutoring, gluten-free bread, and this is where I sell direct to customers. I have a subscription model. People buy 10 loaves at a time, and I bake on a Thursday, and then Rach delivers with the kids while I maths tutor in the evenings. So it's like this kind of seamless interchange between the different aspects of the business. And what else? Oh, we run Little Sirens, which is a kids music class on a Friday morning. And that's just another, you know, that's something that draws on our talents. Like Rach has been singing for years, and I've been playing the guitar since I was a kid, and singing as well. And she started it with a friend, another student of Amanda's, actually, Jacinta. And then when Jacinta went overseas, I took over her role because she plays the guitar and I knew the songs. And then when she came back, I said, I don't actually want to give it back to you. And she said, great, because I've got other things to do. So that was a great little business deal. And so we started, Rach and I started writing songs. We wrote 10 songs, like kids' music songs, about trains, trams and buses, and our beautiful, glorious garden, and the magic color tree, and the fairy dance, and these kind of like songs that kids can really tap into with their imaginations. But we've also written songs for our children. So when Tully was born, Rach wrote the words to this cute song and said, can you find some chords to go with this? And we put it together. And then when he turned 1, Rach and some friends wrote a song, and then when he turned 2, I wrote a song, and then turned 3, we wrote a song together. And then Dara was born, and we wrote another song, and so Dara turned 2, we wrote another song, and then it was like someone else said to us, hey, I would love a song for my kid, and she was a friend of ours, and we knew her son, so we wrote a song for her son, and then Rachel announced in the middle of the music class, and now we're going to be writing songs for every child. We'll just write them every week. And I was like, whoa, I didn't know that. But it had been said, so it had to be done. And so we did every Thursday night for the last 2 years. Well, it's kind of come down to about once every 2 or 3 weeks, but we have a process now where we've written, I think, 40 songs for children who've attended our class. And so early in the week, Rach calls up the parents and gives them an interview using her journalism degree, I would say, using the part of her that wanted to do journalism in the first place. She gets to tell people stories. She gets to interview people and find out. She gets to dig under the surface of what they present when you meet them, and actually find out what's behind this person, what's behind their child and what's the story that brought them into being. So they're almost like family love songs. That's what I feel. It's not just a love song for the parents. It's a love song like a family love. Some of them are epic sagas, and some of them are little ditties that capture the spirit of the child. But they're always incredibly moving processes for us. So on a Thursday night, we put the kids to bed, and then we stay up as long as we need to until the song's written, where we take the raw form of the interview and we put it into some thoughts, and then we hone it into a form, and then we write the chords and the tune, and we sort of bounce off each other. Again, like, I can't write music. Well, I mean, I've written some songs, but they're not very good. And that's because I don't really know what to write about. I'm really good at rhyming. I'm really good at rhythm. I'm really good at finding some chords and putting it all together and making sure it sticks to the form. But I wouldn't know what to put in the form. So I'm like an empty barrel sometimes when it comes to writing music. Whereas Rach is like the opposite. She the same way that she can design a garden, she can design a song from inspiration, from intuition. She's like, we need to write about this, we need to write about that, and she'll put it down, but she won't give any care for sort of rhyme or rhythm. She'll put too many syllables into a line, and I'm like, we've got to take some syllables out. And so we come together and we work together to hone it into something that has substance, but it also has form. And then on the next morning, we're usually quite sleep deprived, but we present the song to the class. And we've just recorded, I think, 33 in the studio with a friend. And so they're about to start coming out, and we'll release them on YouTube, one a week. And so this is where what I said about psychological and emotional barriers comes in, because I think Rach and I both have a fear of being too big. Rach has started some really successful businesses, but she's always sold them or given them away before they get really successful. And so we are now at a precipice where we have to really address that in ourselves and take a leap anyway. And so, one of the things I think Dan talked about last week was the need for a comprehensive social media platform, so, and there are easy ways to do it. I really like what he was talking about with, I can't remember what it was called, Switch or Twitch or Ditch, or I'm showing my age here. What was it? Wick. I don't know. I'll do my research, but it connects your Facebook with your Instagram and your email and yada, yada, yada. Now, I don't have Instagram, so we're going to have to do that. I know I can figure it out, but it's just not my interest. But, to really put energy into the release of these songs to do them justice, so that there's a chance that people might pick up on them and say, hey, you should listen to this song. This one's about a premature birth, or this one is about, a traumatic birth story, or, and it's never explicit. Like, we're not talking in gory details, but we're always referencing them in metaphor and figurative language that sort of tells a story. They're like musical storytelling. So that's where we're heading to now. Have I said everything that we do? Well, Rach we both run leadership courses, but we haven't really been doing that since we've had kids, because it's just been too hard to drag the kids around. We've done a few courses, but that's something that I think we'll put a bit more energy into once both kids are either in childcare or, at kinder and school. But as you can see, it's a complicated, multifaceted business that represents or reflects the fact that we have quite a broad range of skills and interests as people. Yeah, I think that's the story in its raw form. It's been quite fun to tell it. And if anyone has any specific questions, if I think of something else that I want to sort of wrap it up with, then I'll put that in at some point. But do you have any questions at this point?
Ollie,
Yes.
do you also run men's group?
I don't run men's groups. No, I am in a men's circle, which I find extremely useful. And I suppose sometimes I take a bit of a facilitator role, but then I'm not the only one who does. You know, we all step in and run things from time to time. But that's not an element of my professional life. Why is that, Mikoto?
No, I'm just asking.
Ah, yeah. Whew.
I just say, oh, I'm getting an echo here, sorry. I love the way you compliment each other. That's great and very inspiring, I have to say.
Thank you.
Ollie, I have a question. Oh, sorry. I'll bring myself a bit into the light. Thank you very much. That was very informative and wonderful. And I do like the fact that you have a seamless notion between life and work, because I feel like as an artist, you never really stop working. A lot of songs I write in my sleep. I wake up and it's something there, and so I have to get up and actually do something about it for it to become a song. You know, every waking moment, you're somehow digesting or processing some version of what's going on. I tend to find that I need more balance in terms of while I find it a joyful experience and I turn up to it willingly and all the time because I love it and I feel quite free in myself with that. Also find that because it is still work and there's still application and time and focus, that I need more balance in my personal aspect to be able to sorry, I'm feeling a bit long now, to not be too imbalanced emotionally or mentally, because sometimes when you're in a creative mode, especially, like you say, you might stay up Thursday night as long as it takes, because that's the point. This song might be written in a half an hour, it might take 3 hours or more, whatever. You know, how do you find the balance between that? Because for me, I need to prioritize my creativity and my personal balance in order to sustain my capacity to do that in an optimal fashion. But at the same time, I'm also in that sort of point where, as a teacher as well, because I am, that's how I monetize my life, because it's a very big, long, open-ended arc that music and creativity can offer in its own one form, as far as a career or keeping a living goes. But I'm also attempting to sort of whittle down the teaching in order to be able to put more effort into the things that need more effort in order to be able to make them more effective. How do you see drawing the line between, for example, if you were to get really a greater wish for people to have more bread or more songs or more landscaping or more things like that, do you recognize that that is a natural progression that will also monetize itself? Or do you find that because the nature of people experience and creative experience is rewarding on its own, that there's somehow a limit, unless you were to put a business model around it of how to monetize it? So that was a long question.
Yeah, but a really interesting question, and I think a really good question, because I think that's it speaks not just to what you're talking about, but also other problems like it, like how, you know, it's a question of balance in general, because it's not just work-life balance. It's not just the balance. You know, it could be the balance of one business versus the other, and I think that the general approach that we take to it is that, I mean, okay, I'm going to answer your question like on a really practical level first. So I'll just address the bread, because you mentioned the bread of, like, I could keep feeding more and more people bread, but I have capped the bread at 48 loaves a week. Yeah. And that's in one day. And that's because I've decided that even though it could, you know, I could put all my resources into making it a really big bread business, and it could make more money, that wouldn't necessarily bring me more joy as a human being, because I have to acknowledge that I am an organism. I am a human, fundamentally. There's only so much that I need in terms of financial reward. I could do more with it if I had more. That's true. But there would be a cost if I don't grow it in a way that also aligns with my family and with my enjoyment. And I'd say that, so on the bread front alone, I've decided I don't want to be baking bread every day. I get a real joy out of baking one day a week, but if I was doing it every day, I think it would cease to be enjoyable for me, and I would start to count the hours of labor versus the price that I'm, the reward that I'm getting for it. And that is not always good when you're looking at bread. It's not, it's okay, but I could do better as a landscaper, for example, or I could do better in HR, so I don't want to grow something just because I could grow it. And so I've put a cap on that, and I've said that's the kind of business model. So that's like a practical response to what you're saying about putting a business model around capping it. Same with Little Sirens. We've had for the last year or two, it's been bustling. You've seen it when you lived here, that it's like, it's bursting at the seams. And so we could easily say we're going to have 2 sessions on a Friday, or we're going to hire out a space and run it on a Tuesday and Thursday. And maybe we'll get there, but this I think speaks to the deeper point about what you're raising, is that we constantly have to be tapping into what feels good, what feels right, what feels wholesome. And sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between an intuitive desire to do something and a fear response, like the fear of not having enough money, for example, or the fear of not being significant. We could easily overreach ourselves out of a desire to be significant, to be respected in the world, because of feeling on some level inadequate. And so I think that, these problems which we all face, they present themselves as like these really complicated problems that need a complicated solution. But I think that actually they require very simple technical solutions once you deal with the emotional need that's not being met, that's leading to the imbalance. For example, the bread's a pretty simple one day a week. It's not a hard business model to create. But if I couldn't look at the fact that on some level that I might be afraid of not having respect in the community, or not having enough money, then it might drive me to bake more and more and more and take on opportunities that come, but that actually don't serve my more holistic purpose. So it's like, I have to constantly be, and we as a couple have to constantly be checking in with each other about, does this feel good? And are we doing this because we are feeling inspired to do it, or are we doing it because we're scared, or we're avoiding some sort of discomfort in our lives?
Great, thank you. That's excellent. I guess I'm not feeling quite yet sustainable. Whereas I think if you can feel like you have a sustainable subsistence, then, because that's all I really particularly want as well. I don't need, a lot, but I also do recognize that within the course of the arts, there is a desire to be recognized and to have that seen. I think there's something that, even if you work for the honor of other things and other people with your art, there is a sense that you've sort of been given a certain gift for a reason. And so there, I see that challenge, that idea of going, do I want to be significant? Is there more than just the safety of feeling more sustainable, which is currently where I'm at the moment, with the idea of why I would rather leave more teaching, even though I find it a privilege to be part of young children's becoming. And there is something that I really do like about that. But again, like, as the same way you might have chosen tutoring over classroom and systemic sort of institution teaching, I see that, the satisfaction in there. And so I guess I just haven't found my balance between all of the parts, including the sense of it being completely sustainable.
Yeah, and to that point, I really hear you, and I think that like it's easy for me to stand here right now and present this in a way that makes it look like I've achieved something. I mean, and in many ways, I have achieved a lot to be where I am, but I'm also not there yet in terms of I'm on a process, you're on a process, we're all on a process, and so all we can really do is take the next step. I think that for me, that's been the theme of all of these talks. Is like, you know, I am. I'm not at 48 loaves yet. I'm at 36 loaves. So the bread isn't like it pays me, I think, about $200 a day, which is pretty cool. You know, that's what I used to get landscaping. But it's not what I get now landscaping. So, you know, there's a process that if I stopped here, I wouldn't feel like I had really achieved everything I could. And so there are always, at any point, there are always, I think, areas where you're not quite where you want to be. You know, there's like, and for you, it sounds like you're producing lots of music, you're creating lots of music, you're putting out albums, but you're also doing more teaching than you'd like to. So it's like, okay, if that's your current reality, that's, you know, it's great to acknowledge it. It's good to see that's where I am, and it's not quite where I want to be. Well, where would I like to be? Because once you establish those 2 points, where am I and where do I want to be, then the path actually starts to open itself up to you, and it's just a matter of how courageous are you in taking each step. And maybe you never reach that final goal. Maybe you die tomorrow. But I don't mean to jinx it, by the way.
No,
but
I don't guess it's going to happen. Yeah,
it's a figure of speech. But you know, you died working towards your dream. You died taking courageous leaps of inspiration. And even if your current reality is I'm not ready to take that leap, or I'm scared of taking X or Y leap, then you know that's still, you're acknowledging that reality, and that's like all I think any of us can do is acknowledge where we want to go, acknowledge where we are, and then go, well, what am I going to do today? And that never changes. Yeah. Does that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I think Makoto had a question.
Yeah. So, Ollie,
Yes, Makoto.
you are talking about your income from a range of different services and creating a system and diversify. And I think I am the same. I do Japanese translation, and I do reducing food waste and preserving all the excess produce from people's backyard. I do voluntary work. I do different things. And you're doing a tutoring, you're doing landscaping, you're doing bread, and I can see your web page is bread web page, but do you have one web page as Ollie has tutoring, landscape, and all the different things? So I can see your web page, and I also get your email about ordering bread. So how do you have any social media platform to
You got me. You got me.
So could you just explain that to me, please?
Yeah, I'm very old-fashioned, and you've got me. You've got my my Achilles heel. And that's I think for me that's my next step. If I want to do anything, if I want to be more more successful, more like have a wider reach in each of those areas, which I think I do in most areas. There's developments that I would like to make. Then I need to be more savvy with social media. I need to let go of some limiting attitudes that I have towards social media. I sort of see it as like a newfangled technology that I'd rather not be part of. And if I'm really honest with myself, then I can see that there's a part of me that on a conscious level says, oh, I don't need that. I'll get there through word of mouth, or I'll get there through my own reputation. But actually, there's probably a part of me that feels safer staying at this level. you know, staying at this particular size. And I know that if I were to put energy, specific energy into advancing a, you know, my online presence, that there would be a much greater reach, and that I would start getting business in from different areas. It just opens up a whole new world. And I have to look at that part of me that is scared of what comes with being bigger. And I think, you know, up till now, I haven't been able to go there because I've just been growing what I am doing. I've just been honing the systems, making it all work, getting to a point where I'm sustainable, where I'm not working for someone else, you know, laying all the groundwork. And it's only now that I can even see that that's my next step. And I think that's the next step for Rach too. We both need to support each other through that, because neither of us are social media savvy, and neither of us really enjoy technology in a big way. Well, you know, online technology. And so either we need to find the right person to do it, or we need to take a big swallow and sit down and figure it out and get better at it. So yeah, I have a bread website that a friend of ours made. We paid her to make that, and I think it's really nice. You know, I'm happy with it, but I think that it's time for me to learn to use that technology myself, so that I can update the blog and update details and make it actually reflect the really up-to-date details of the business. But also to, as you say, connect it up with the different areas of my professional world. And I'm not sure whether that's the best thing to do from an image point of view, whether that starts to look like a jack of all trade, master of none. If your website says I'm a landscaper, maths tutor, bread baker, and music writer, whether someone's going to take a look at that who doesn't actually know what I do, hasn't seen my work, and go, oh, can't he pick a lane, you know? But I don't think that's true. I write what I do, but you know, is that the best thing to do? I don't know. So I just got to feel that out and take the next steps and be courageous myself. Walk my
I got
talk.
another question, Ollie.
Yeah.
One more question. I know that, you know, you live in a community, and I do too. And sometimes it's hard to ask for money, and we do lots of like gift economy.
Yeah.
So how are you doing with that? Like, you know, if people.
Yeah, that's a really good question too,
like
because
your bread is $10 a loaf.
no, $12 now.
Sorry.
It's $12 now.
Sorry. So you
No.
are the $12. And if somebody said, can we swap, or you know, so
yeah,
how much you do the economy and how you decide?
Yeah. So I mean, first of all, whether I do a swap or not always depends on whether the person is swapping something of value to me. I'm not going to swap with someone just to be nice to them, because I don't think, you know, that taps into what I said before, is if I go around being really nice in the world and it's not feeding me, then I'm going to run out of energy, and I'm going to stop doing nice things in the world, and I'm going to become bitter and twisted. So I wouldn't pretend to be altruistic in that regard. But actually, it's really interesting that you asked that question, and particularly that you thought my bread was $10 a loaf, because it used to be. And that's when I first started, I was like, oh, I couldn't charge what I think it's actually worth. I'm going to charge a little bit less. And that was kind of subconscious. And in some ways that's a good thing. You know, you get into the market maybe by underselling yourself, and then you get a reputation, and you start to realize that what you're producing, what you're providing actually is of value. And then you have to say to people, we have to, at some point, take a deep breath and say to people, look, I've raised my prices. If you can't afford it, that's fine. I'm happy to keep you at the old price. If you want to move on to another provider of bread or landscaping or tutoring, I totally understand. Otherwise, I now charge $90 an hour. My bread's $12 an hour, $12 a loaf. And I charge $50 an hour when I'm landscaping. So that's been very hard for me to value myself, because I think you know, everyone's psychological and emotional reasons for not for not valuing themselves are going to be slightly different, but maybe they have a common theme. What I identified in myself was that if I charge what I'm actually worth, or what I think I'm worth, maybe I can never get exactly what I'm worth, but let's say what I think I'm worth, then I am now responsible in a whole new way to my customers and my clients. And it changes the way that I do my service. You know, now that I'm charging more for my maths tutoring, I actually think I'm a better maths tutor, because there's something in me that says, you got to do this properly. You're not just doing this for charity anymore. You're doing it as a fully professional service. So you got to take it really seriously. And also, I think other people have hit on this in previous talks, is that people come to you with very little information sometimes. And sometimes all they have to go by is your price. And we're so terrible at assessing value as humans that we often just look at the price and go, oh, that's how valuable it is. You know, so like they've shown this with wine, that professional wine tasters will always mark the more expensive wine better, even if they switch the labels. And so, and that sounds pretty cynical, because, you know, you're sort of saying like, I'm good because I charge more. But it actually, if you flip that around and look at it a different way, it means that people actually come to you expecting a good service. And so they're sort of coming to the table with the right attitude, because you don't want to come to you don't want them to come to you with a suspicious eye for whether you're good or not, because they've seen how cheap you are and they think that you're not very good. And so they're like, I'll give you a go, but I'm not going to be easily impressed. Whereas if they come to the table thinking, oh, this guy, you know, is probably pretty good, and then you do a good job, it's much smoother. It's much more likely to go well if everyone's coming to the table with the right attitude. And I think money helps that, because of the system we're working in. If we were living in a barter economy, it would be very different.
I've got a question for you. I'm also interested in doing a really long list of things, and
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like it didn't occur to me that I might actually be able to do quite a lot of this, and you guys seem to be doing that. And I'm just wondering if you've got anything to say about having that many things to do, but still feeling like easeful and getting stuff done. Like, does it get overwhelming? How do you manage having that much going on?
Yeah, that's a really good question too, because I think that, you know, that's something that I occasionally have to check in with in myself. Like, am I in balance, or am I getting out of balance? And I asked Rach the exact question last night. I said, sometimes do you feel like it's hard to keep track of all the things? Because I think Rach plays that role a lot more than I do. I mean, maybe not. I think I actually hold a lot in my head that I don't talk about, but certainly Rach will be the one to say, I think it's time to release the songs. I think we need to have a meeting with Sam, the sound engineer, and talk about how we're going to do it. Or I think you need to, you know, bake bread for these people as a promotion. Or I think you need to, I think we need to talk to Monica about the email. I mean, about the website. It's like, there's all these different things that you could do. And I said, I said to Rach, do you ever get overwhelmed by how many things there are to do or think about? And she said, only when I'm scared. Only when I'm coming from fear. But if I'm in the flow, if I'm tapping into that intuition, then no. It's like, you basically, you know, if you like, go back to what I said with Carl, you know, if you're aware of your current reality, and you're aware of your future or your vision, and because you need to know both in order to get anywhere. And then you sprinkle in a bit of patience, because you'll never get to your ultimate vision of life. It's just not how life works. And so if you're okay to be where you are, whilst at the same time holding this vision of where you want to go, then it doesn't really matter which stage of the process you're on. You're just doing the next step. And that's where that's where this intuition is so powerful, is because it does all the work for you. You know, it's basically the fast thinking part of our brains that deals with all of that, that wakes up in the morning and has a song for Carl. And so Carl has to write it down. He's like, he's at the service of his inner genius, you know? And if you're trusting your inner genius and looking at the fear that comes up to block you from listening to that inner genius, then you know what to do. And you just have to face the fear and do that thing. But that is hard, and that shouldn't be understated. So no, I don't get overwhelmed when I'm listening to my genius, but I do get overwhelmed sometimes, and that's a sign to me that I have to look at the fear that I'm holding, that's blocking me from listening.
Okay, that's a great answer.
Thanks, Viv.
Ollie, I've got one kind of comment and one question.
Yeah.
So my comment is that many years ago, I did a graduate diploma in careers counselling, and I often find it really interesting to think about people and think about what their occupational or vocational profile might be, and it would also be really interesting, I think, because and I wonder which, first of all, you would kind of maybe see as being the strongest influence. So to me, you look like you've got, there's, I think, 7 possibilities and occupational types. And the first is entrepreneurial. I think you've got that. Then your teaching would be social, your desire to help people. Your music would be the artistic. And then you've got, but you've also got the practical or realistic, it's called, which is like your landscaping and your cooking. So I'm just wondering, and that's perfectly fine. Most people get like 3 codes if they do these particular sort of suite of tests, and one will often come out stronger than the other. And in many cases, people will pick. They'll find that their occupation will satisfy one of those needs that they've got or part of their profile, and the others, say if they were strongly S or social, they might be a teacher, but they might also have that artistic and realistic leanings as well, and that might become part of their recreation or their hobbies or whatever. That's how they get a well-rounded life. So I'm just wondering, what would you see as being, do you think, your strongest influence of those, or wouldn't you have one? Do you find them all even?
Yeah, I mean, without doing the test, I wouldn't know for sure. But I know that right from primary school, when I was at primary school, I did quite well academically and sporting and culturally. And so at the end, they had these award ceremonies, and I got like runner-up certificates for every category.
Yeah, right.
And I was really, I could have celebrated that. That was really cool. But instead, I just felt like, I didn't get anything. Like I didn't win at anything. And I think there are psychological reasons for that. I think that I do cut myself down before I get to a certain size, and that's that ties into my talk of what for me is my next step, is to have the courage to excel. To really nail it, to stick the landing, and not knock myself down, just a little tweak so that I'm not too threatening, But I did get the General Excellence Cup, which was like this trophy, basically, I think designed for someone like me who's nearly very good at everything, but not quite. So I don't know. I really think that maybe I have a foot in all camps. I don't know about the entrepreneurial one in a way, because I think that really of the two of us, Rach is the stronger entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I'm a very willing participant on the ride, and I come up with ideas, but I think that without her, I never would have had the courage to say, I can do this. Maybe, I don't know, because we can't live 2 lives. And I did do some courageous things before we were together, but I think she's enabled me to go to a new level stepping out. And I think what you're talking about is quite interesting in the regard of like, we have a model of saying, what are your particular skills or strengths? And here's a job that already exists that matches that. And I think everyone here is united by something where they're saying, actually, you know what, I'm going to create the job that matches my talents and my interests, because that's the only way to really match it one-to-one. And maybe even not maybe you never get 100% match, but the only really, for me, I think the only way to find something that really matches my interests and skills is to create something that didn't exist before, because I didn't exist before.
That's interesting. And so my question relates to the entrepreneurial one too, is that would you see your way through forward as ever being employing somebody else to do the work that you are, you know, kind of you're coming up with, and would you find that satisfying too, or would you find that to be sort of like that's not the way you want to go?
No, definitely. I can see that being like a 10-year vision, and I could see that there would be a temptation. This touches on a lot of things that we've already talked about, but there would be a temptation for me to do that too quickly, out of some compensation, you know, out of some compensation for a lack or a fear that I have. And so if I'm not aware of those that would drive me to do that too early, then I could drive this into the ground by having too many people relying on me and not having the groundwork all laid out as fully as it needs to be. And so when I really tap into my inspiration in terms of my intuition, that's not what I am led to do yet, but I can definitely see that it will be one day. And at the moment, I need to continue to develop what I've already started, to really find what it is that is my niche. Because in landscaping, I've been building, you know, I've been doing a few sort of shed renovations and a bit of paving and some ready lawn. What do you call it? Artificial? No, not instant turf. That's the word I'm looking for. We call it ready lawn in New Zealand. But I'm really finding this niche in turning recycled materials, salvaging recycled materials, and then creating a multifaceted ecosystem or system in someone's property. And we've done it here in a new way, like to a new level that we haven't gone to before. And so the way that Rach and I work together, this is our niche, and we're still finding exactly what that is. And so to hire someone at this stage would feel a bit premature. But I actually, funny you say that, because someone just said to me the other day, I've got this paving project that is beyond me. Could you head it? And I said, yes, but I need you to come and work with me on another paving project first. And so we're going to do that together. And, you know, that's not quite, I'm not employing him, but we're going to be employed on the same level by the client, but I'll be heading both projects. So, you know, that's a sort of step in that direction for sure. Holly, you had a question.
Well, I'm new to this forum, and it's been very inspiring. Thank you. I'm going to take this off for me now. Hang on. Oops. Wow. So where can I start? But there's so much I loved about what you said, Ollie, you know, your enthusiasm and courage and naming that. And I guess I'm working in the embodiment field, and what you are inferring to a lot is this reflectiveness, you know, finding those parts in yourself, the fear, and, you know, tapping into that. And so coming from that. So I suppose I'm thinking that's fantastic, you know, that you're entering and then function and action. So that I'm at a different point in my life, being in my 70s. And so I've thought in terms of action. So I've used this COVID time to use space to really reflect, you know, on what I want to do, which is a different stage in your life. But just even as you were talking I saw someone's beanbag last night that was for weighting down children, for sensory relaxation and stuff, sensory processing. And I thought, wow, they could be doing a little business, So it's sort of, my granddaughter's making fast masks, so she's doing a little business. So I thought, I think I'm at that point of witnessing and supporting both myself in my own business, but in others. And so I suppose I'm excited by hearing, I can feel that excitement by hearing that, that little bundling of either activities that are for businesses or whether they're actually money making from my stage in life, or supporting others to do the same. And, I'm loving the idea of you co-creating internally with the different parts of yourself, and then co-creating with others to make different parts. So all this part, and part, that weaving in is so good, and it's everything I'm studying in terms of the nervous system and embodiment. It's all in the body, so it's like that's the embodiment of ourselves. I guess that's just really good, and I do understand that at your time of life what we're facing too, and this whole massive disruption, but the love bug of the other side of COVID, the love bug of forcing us out. I don't know, it's very, it's very rich composting.
Yeah, I think, thanks, Holly. I think that's really nice to hear that feedback. And I think that sorry, I'm just switching my thing around because I'm trying to make people bigger, but it's not working. Yeah, I feel like what's drawn everyone to this talk, or to the series of talks, is a desire to engage more in what you're talking about, the complex, rich system of their life and of their professional life, which is different. And this is absolutely not a judgment on people getting a job. It's just, it hasn't worked for me. In terms of, it hasn't worked long term. I've enjoyed certain jobs, but it hasn't been like, I've never landed in a job and gone, yep, I'm here forever now. I'm gonna stick this out. I've always felt like there's something in me that wants to. So maybe I am an entrepreneur, Suzanne. But I feel like it's such a fun life project, what you're describing there, of connecting in with what's going on internally, and then producing results on the outside. And then once you've produced those results, it creates a new sort of compost for the internal world to fester on, because you've created a platform for success, for example. Now you have to engage with the part of you that's resistant to success, but you didn't have to interact with that part when there was no prospect of success. So you sort of, it's a constant feedback loop, I feel, between the action and then the new reaction internally to the outcomes of the action. It's like this kind of this loop that I'm loving being on.
Yes, and I think also what you're really coming from, I know you and Rachel, hard to you, but this really very, very intelligent recognition of how nuts the society has gone, and the ridiculous, pathways that have happened in this whole materialism. So you've used your very raw intelligence and creativity to really tunnel down into just how ridiculous actually the education system is, but actually intended to create the narrowness, not the creativity. So I think that fear is helped by this intelligence. Well, that's, like depression, we now know that's a biological phenomena when the system collapses from overwhelm. There's so much now in the field of Gene Gendlin focusing, or polyvagal theory, some of these things that I study. I thought, wow, the body's the whole landscape, coming from 600 millions of, history behind us, and it's all in us. So it's sort of all there. So I think, you didn't quite say it, but I think that intelligence of both of you and the groups that you're in, including my daughter, Amy, but it's like, wow, good on you, because that's what COVID's really showing up, I think, how for us to live, and you younger people at this time of your life of rebuilding, it's like, wow. you know, and the creativity that Carl spoke of. You know, sometimes it does need more reflection, doesn't it? So you have to pull in those parts that we've exiled. That's really what I'm doing, is understanding, you know, just born after the Second World War, you know, how I've exiled parts too, and I'm trying to suck them in to think, okay, what can this part do? You know, whether it was, as you talk about, putting yourself out there, you know, or, you know, not making yourself smaller, you know. So,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you. Thanks, Ollie.
Yeah,
It was so inspiring after having, you know, known you and being sort of watching but never really hearing all the details, and it's so very relevant as I try and juggle my different parts of myself and bringing it back to being able to look at that, you know, that fear that comes up, because I know that, you know, the overwhelm will come up and I'll sort of go straight off and straight into doing some tapping without actually going and looking at that. So thank you. It's very very inspiring and very beneficial. So thank you. Thanks so much.
So
yeah,
I'll just say it's 11:30 now, 11:20.
yeah.
And I've got to go. I
So
need to
we'll
go.
just quickly finish by just saying a little comment. This is how we finish these talks.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Of what we got from it. So I'll just say your name and then you can unmute yourself and just share what you will take away from this talk.
I've already done it.
Yeah, Sharon's done it. Holly's just done it, had to leave. So Amanda, yeah.
Thank you, Ollie. Thank you, Rach, for inviting me. I actually found this extremely useful, and it felt like you were speaking directly to me on a whole lot of issues. And they're all things that I've thought about. And I am hugely, I mean, Holly, they were doing all of this well before COVID. They just had COVID time to make all that beautiful garden. But I don't want to speak very much, but I really want to speak to you. I want to ask you both some questions, but I don't want to talk to everybody about all of that. And I just want to say that this was incredibly beneficial to me. So I'm very glad to have been here. Thank you. And
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks for joining.
Hopefully see you soon. And goodbye, everybody else. It was nice to meet all of you. And I really have to leave because I meant to leave at 11. So thank you. Bye.
Bye.
And sorry about Harry. He wanted food and he had some.
We love Harry.
Bye.
Bye. And now Carl.
Yes, thank you very much. Sorry, it's outside and it's a bit windy here now, so you may hear that. But just to say thanks. I've often been, I've noticed a natural movement in my interests and appreciation in both Ollie and Rachel, the way you do life, and your attitudes and your intelligence and your application and your sort of flatlessness, seemingly. This has always been a bit inspiring and hopefully mirroring in a recognition, sort of a resonance as to what I have as a possibility. So I really did get a lot out of this today, and thank you for sharing so candidly and honestly, Ollie. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Carl. Thanks for your questions. I feel like they helped me to sort of draw out a bit more what I meant or what I wanted to say. So that's what I hope.
Good. Thank you. All right. See you.
Bye. And Suzanne.
Yeah, thanks, Ollie. That was really great. Oh, my reflection, I guess, is that I really do admire you and Rachel's making a lifestyle choice and really following it through so consistently through your whole life. And I don't think you should underestimate the talent that it just takes to do that and to be able to pull it all together and to keep all those balls in the air. Because for some people, say for me, I wouldn't be able to do that. I wouldn't be able to keep all those disparate bits sort of working as well as you two do, and I really admire that. Just kind of shows people are really different, doesn't it? And I don't know, I feel like I've kind of learnt a lot by knowing both of you and the way that you do operate and with your family and your work, and I feel like I've really kind of been blessed by that. So thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne. And I really hear you that, you know, and I think I said it at the beginning of the talk, that not everyone would want to run a life and business like this. You know, it's, for some people, it's actually more enjoyable, more desirable, more peaceful for them to draw a line between work and home, and also to just have one job rather than five or six. And that's just totally, you know, who we are. And so I hope that my talk was more about drawing on our own talents and our own interests to create our own unique kind of business. And ours just happens to look like that, which is pretty you know, pretty far reaching, but that's because we have disparate.
And I would just say that, Suzanne, you probably do about 10 jobs in your one job.
Totally. Absolutely. Not least of which is wrangling people with their paperwork, like me. So I'll do mine, and we should all do ours.
Jane.
Hi, yeah, I think a bit like Amanda said, I was only going to be here till 11, but I've enjoyed it that much that I've stayed longer. But no, it's very useful, very inspiring. As I said before, I love the way you bounce off each other and you know, support each other. And I think, as I said before, I had 3 jobs for the last 10 months, and I realised it wasn't doing my health any good having fibromyalgia. And so I, you know, took that leap and made that decision to give the one up that I wasn't enjoying. The money was the best out of all of them. But as you say, money's not everything. And so the money that I managed to save from that, I'm putting towards, you know, getting supplies to do something that I do enjoy on those 2 days. So I'm still employed by OAE, so I still have some income. So I feel like if I'm not going to do it now, I never will use those 2 days. And so your talk, you know, has inspired me even more to do that. So thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you.
And Lana.
Hi, Ollie. Yes, thank you very much. I enjoyed that immensely too. So what stood out for me the most, probably that you're very conscious of trying to stay grounded in the present, and being grounded in the present in reflecting how you feel and tuning into those feelings and using that to make your life's decisions. So I really appreciated that. Things like, you know, thinking about, have you got some fears there, like of not having enough money or respect in the community? These things, you know, often they are sitting there in the background, and they're having a huge impact on people and their decisions and even their unwillingness to take risks. And I think that that can be really crippling. And I think it's really important to be able to tune into those things because they're sitting there in the background all the time. So I really appreciated that kind of focus you put on really zoning into the present, how you're feeling, and utilizing what you're feeling in the present to make sure you keep going forward. That might mean pushing some things into the background because you realize it's affecting you and making decisions. So thank you very much. I really enjoyed that. So I'll go away and reflect more on what's going on inside me at this point in time.
Thanks, Lana.
Thank you.
Yeah, sounds great.
And Vivi.
Oh, you're on mute, Viv.
You're mute. Vivi, you're muted. Viv.
But I loved those gesticulations. They were really, I got so much out of it.
Do that. I really got so much out of it in lots of ways, and I'm just trying to drill down to the nub of the best thing I got out of it. Is something like this. I feel like there's such creative, vital energy that you're sitting in, and you're so in your body and you're so in your heart in all the things that you're talking about. And I've got a big list of things that I want to do, and it helped me tune into what you're doing and see where I can take that there. So thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Viv.
And Macindoe.
Yeah.
Macindoe's gone. Oh no, there she is.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rachel and Ollie. And today really made me think, what do I want to create? Like what do I want? Where do I want to go? And you talked about future vision and 10-year vision. I think I just tend to do things each day. I don't have a long-term vision, so I think I like to work on that a bit more, and I like to hear how you do this visioning. When I have time, or maybe I like to talk to you about it. And yeah, so really made me stop to think, what am I doing today to create my dream? Thank you.
Thanks, Macindoe. Well, we will thank you, Ollie, for sharing so engagingly from that real honest place of where your life has taken you to be where it is today. And yeah, it's an honor to be your partner in this and share this journey with you. And yeah, I just feel really inspired by everyone who's here, who's got that little inkling and starting to follow it. So yeah, it's lovely to be a part of this series. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks everyone for the opportunity to share. Yeah, it's actually it's an honor to have that space and that listening and feedback, but also just the opportunity to kind of map where I've come from to be where I am, and a little bit of a glimmer of where I want to be going from here, because I don't think we get the opportunity very often to really tell our story and to process our story through the telling of it. So I've actually got a huge amount out of hearing my own voice. Out of I'm joking, of course, out of, just of having the opportunity to tell my.
And thanks, Rachel, also for organising it and pulling all the speakers together. You've done a great job.
It's such a pleasure.
Yeah. Who's next week, Rachel? Who's coming up?
Madeline from Madeline's.
Ah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so she started her business when she was like 5 on her farm selling eggs.
Yeah.
So she's a mum of 2. She'll be great.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Hi, Lana. Can I just ask them where I can find your bread? Is it on the website?
Yeah, it's Jane. It's on the website, and I can give.
I can send Jane the email if you like.
That would be good, because I can only eat organic gluten-free bread.
Yeah.
So I'm always looking out for organic, especially gluten-free.
Yeah, Suzanne, can you send that through to Jane, the email?
Yeah,
and I think it's
great. Thank you.
Details. Yeah, great.
Lovely. Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye, Suzanne.
See you, Jane.